it's so disappointing because like it's not just isolated either. Like I watched unbelievable amounts of people. And like, so you talk
Mm,
about how like the general public isn't like particularly numerate and maybe doesn't have the best critical thinking skills. And I mean, it's just like fair enough. Like
yeah.
that's probably the case. I mean, that's no, you know, there's not to disparage the general public about that. I mean, it's just
Reality.
yeah, it's reality. I mean, like it doesn't make them bad people at all.
No.
And then, but I see like journalists who are well educated, like smart, intelligent, critical thinkers. Like, do you
Mm,
think that this was and they just failed to see any of this stuff? Like I was saying about the World Economic Forum stuff, and like there's this group who has a lot of very huge and quite disruptive plans for the future of humanity. They envision how it's going to be, and it's like fair enough. Some billionaires are going to get together and chat about what they think the future is. Fine, you know that's not insidious in itself. They've been like rich people have been doing that for years. Poor
yeah.
people do that too. We just go to the pub and do it, and we have no actual power, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Um, but then they have their young global leaders program that's like every significant politician in the Western world almost, or every significant leader, and they go on stage and they talk about how they've infiltrated the cabinets. They like openly talk about it's like, oh, you will own nothing and you'll be happy, and it's just like that's not just like a them pretending there's going to be some proto-communist state. It's just like they want to own and rent out everything to us,
and
housing.
why not?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Because
the way it's going in the world. Like, it's not insane to suggest that people want that to go further. Like, and yet, when you say to them, do you consider the World Economic Forum to be a problem? Like, do you think the globalists
mm,
are a threat to like the sovereignty of individual nations to like be their own masters? And they immediately go, oh, anti-Semit. That's anti-Semitic.
yeah.
Like I was having this discussion earlier with someone on Twitter, like literally going back and forth and being like, how is it anti-Semitic to say like global institutions that are like subsuming the autonomy of individual nations is a bad thing? How is that anti-Semitic?
Yeah. Well, no, I've heard that one a few times as well, and I don't even know who's. I often don't know who's Jewish and who's not. Now I know there were the Rothschild family, the big bankers.
Hmm.
You know, there were probably involved in setting up the Fed in 1913, I think, in the US, and the Bank of England. They're private institutions. Everyone thinks the Fed and the Bank of England, they're government, right? They issue money and they change rates and they're government. They're private corporations with shareholders. And in both cases, the shareholders have been kept secret for a century or more. You can't find out who the shareholders are for whatever reason. But I know the Rothschilds and all and banking families are associated with that, and they're of Jewish extraction.
Hmm.
So
But I
the
don't see any
anti-Semite,
of these people talk like when people talk about the globalists and the World Economic Forum, unless it's some like insane person ranting in the YouTube comment section, right? I have never heard a serious commentator ever mention the Rothschild, like really ever mention like George Soros, who like often comes up in these sorts
no,
of things.
it's a
Like they're
conspiracy theory.
yeah, but they're
Even
literally
though,
talking about things you can see.
well, I was going to make the point the Rothschilds, but Rockefeller, I don't know very well names and what their etiology is or whatever. But Rockefeller, I don't know if Rockefeller is Jewish or not. I don't know. But
I actually
Rockefeller,
don't know either.
no. But the thing is, Rockefeller family is a huge part of this. And it's 50, 60 years we've been coming to this point. I mean, if you put one link down below this, is a 45-minute talk I found recently. It's brilliant. It's an historical analysis with newspaper clippings and references from a Swedish doctor or professor. He's a PhD in science and he's published many books long before COVID on the history of these internationalists and how far they've come. And basically, Rockefeller back in the 50s through to the 60s, Kissinger came on board. They created many groups, and I mean, Bilderberg and Trilateral Commission,
Mm,
and you know, the Club of Rome was the environmental wing.
yeah.
But all these groups, they now sit at the center of the internationalist organizations, the UN, The UN has now allied last year with the WEF, and they've basically done a merger. So this is all historical fact, documented, and their influence is beyond belief. I mean, I gotta hand it to them, hand the enemy credit. The job they've done and the patience to spend 50 or 60 years doing it and not try and go off too quick. They waited patiently 50 or 60 years in order to have a greater and greater control so they could do what humans at the top have always done for since the dawn of humanity. It's always, whether you go from the Roman Empire or Shaka Zulu Empire in Africa, anywhere you look, always empires have risen, led by a select few, and then sometimes they collapse, and then it starts again. Well, here we are, and the modern one, though, is different because it's a technocracy, and it involves corporate power and corporate individuals as a big global group taking over. And that makes it even worse than before, because before it was a small number of people who held power through force. But now it's basically all of our top corporations together, working together in a stakeholder capitalism model of the planet. You know, that link, if you put it below, people will be fascinated. But I will say one thing I discovered new, because I know a lot of this stuff anyway. Do you know when climate change first came up as a strategy to help with the management of the world, you know, and all those ragtag little people who are so irksome to the rich and the wealthy?
Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.